Bobsleigh. A bobsled is a winter sport in which teams of 2 or 4 teammates make timed runs down narrow, twisting, banked, ice tracks in heavily-powered sled. The timed runs are combined to calculate the final score. The various types of sleds came several years before the first tracks were built in St. Moritz, Switzerland, where the original bobsleds were adapted upsized luge skeleton sleds designed by the adventurously wealthy to carry passengers. All 3 types were adapted from boys' delivery sleds and toboggans. Competition naturally followed, and to protect the working class and rich visitors in the streets and byways of St. Moritz, bobsledding was eventually banned from the public highway. In the winter of 1903–1904, the Badrat family, owners of the historic Culm Hotel and the Palace Hotel, allowed Emil Thoma to organize the construction of the first familiarly configured half-pipe track in the Culm Hotel Park, ending in the village of Cresta. It has hosted the sport during 2 Olympics and is still in use today. International bobsleigh competitions are governed by the International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation, also known as FIBT, from the French Fédération Internationale de Bobsleigh et de Tobogganing. National competitions are often governed by bodies such as the United States Bobsled and Skeleton Federation and Bobsleigh Canada Skeleton. History. Although sledding on snow or ice had been popular in many northern countries, bobsleighing as a modern sport originated relatively recently. It developed from 2 crestas attached together with a board and with a steering mechanism attached to the front cresta. The sport had humble beginnings, starting when the successful marketing of hotelier Caspar Badrat enticed English tourists were to stay over the winter in the mineral spa town of St. Moritz, Switzerland. Badrat, annoyed with the limitations of a season of a mere 4 months for the rooms, food, alcohol and activities he provided, successfully sold the idea of winter resorting to some of his English regulars. In the 1870s, some of his more adventurous English guests began adapting boys' delivery sleds for recreation and began colliding with pedestrians while speeding down the village's lanes, alleys and roads. The name of the sport appeared when competitors adopted the technique of bobbing back and forth inside the sled to increase its speed. This had both short and long-term outcomes. In the short term, the guests began to scheme about and invent steering means for the sleds, which became the luge, bobsleighs, and head-first skeleton. Long-term, after a couple of more years of happy pedestrian peril, Badrat built a special track for their activities, the world's first natural ice half-pipe track in about 1870. Still in operation as of 2014, this has served as a host track during 2 Winter Olympics. As one of the few natural weather tracks in the world, it does not use artificial refrigeration. Badrat's satisfied guests eventually enabled him to build the Badrat's Palace Hotel, while holding on to the popular Krupp Hotel, and brought competition in as winter tourism in alpine locales became very popular. The first informal races took place on snow-covered roads. Formal competitions started in 1884 at St. Moritz. It's not known how much the original track evolved in the early years as the 3 sports matured and stabilized. The first club formed in 1897, and the first purpose-built track solely for bobsleds opened in 1902 outside of St. Moritz. Over the years, bobsleigh tracks evolved from straight runs to twisting and turning tracks. The original wooden sleds gave way to streamlined fiberglass and metal ones. The International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation was founded in 1923. Men's 4-man bobsleigh appeared in the first ever Winter Olympic Games in 1924, and the men's 2-man bobsleigh event was added in 1932. Though not included in the 1960 Winter Olympics, bobsleigh has featured in every Winter Olympics since. Women's bobsleigh competition began in the U.S. in 1983 with 2 demonstration races in Lake Placid, New York, one held in February and the second held during the World Cup races in March 1983. Women's 2-woman bobsleigh made its Olympic debut at the 2002 Winter Olympic Games. Bobsleigh is also contested at American, European, and World Cup championships. Germany and Switzerland have proven the most successful bobsleighing nations measured by overall success in European, World Cup, and Olympic championships. Since the 1990s, Germans have dominated in international competition, having won more medals than any other nation. Italy, Austria, USA and Canada also have strong bobsleigh traditions. Bobsleighs can attain speeds of 150 km per hour, with the reported world record being 201 km per hour. However, the United States Bobsled and Skeleton Federation repeatedly rejected this record due to lack of documentation. Tracks. Modern tracks are made of concrete, coated with ice. They are required to have at least one straight section and one labyrinth. Ideally, a modern track should be 1,200 to 1,300 meters long and have at least 15 curves. Speeds may exceed 120 kilometers per hour, and some curves can subject the crews to as much as 5 grams. Some bobsleigh tracks are also used for luge and skeleton competition. Some tracks offer tourist rides in bobsleighs, including those at Sigulda, Latvia, Innsbruck, IGLs, Austria, Calgary, Canada, Whistler, Canada, Lillehammer, Norway, Cesana Pariol, Italy, Lake Placid, USA, Salt Lake City, USA, and La Plagne, France. The most famous of all the turns is the Peterson. The Peterson is renowned for its trademark 180-degree turn and 270-degree bank angle, which is a compulsory feature on all Winter Olympic runs. The Peterson is named after the pioneer track designer Heidi Peterson. All modern artificial ice tracks were designed by Udo Gergel. Sleighs and crews. Modern-day sleighs combine light metals, steel runners, and an aerodynamic composite body. Competition sleighs must be a maximum of 3.80 meters long or 2.70 meters long. The runners on both are set at 0.67 meters gauge. Until the weight limit rule was added in 1952, bobsleigh crews tended to be very heavy to ensure the greatest possible speed. Now, the maximum weight, including crew, is 630 kilograms, 390 kilograms, or 340 kilograms, which can be reached via the addition of metal weights. The bobsleighs themselves are designed to be as light as possible to allow dynamic positioning of mass through the turns of the bobsleigh course. Bobsleigh crews once consisted of 5 or 6 friends, but were reduced to 2 and 4-person sleighs in the 1930s. A crew is made up of a pilot, a brakeman, and only in 4-man heats, 2 pushers. Athletes are selected based on the speed and strength, which are necessary to push the sleigh to a competitive speed at the start of the race. Pilots must have the skill, timing, and finesse to steer the sleigh along the path or line that will produce the greatest speed. In modern bobsleighs, the steering system consists of 2 metal rings that actuate a pulley system located in the forward cowling that turns the front runners. For example, to turn left, the pilot would pull the left ring. Only subtle steering adjustments movements are necessary to guide the sled at speeds up to 80 miles per hour. Anything larger would result in a crash. The pilot does most of the steering, and the brakeman stops the sled after crossing the finish by pulling the sled's brake lever. Women compete in women's bobsleigh, and men in both 2- and 4-man competitions. Races, individual runs down the course, or heats begin from a standing start, with the crew pushing the sled for up to 50 meters before boarding, though the pilot does not steer. Grooves in the ice make steering unnecessary until the sled leaves the starting area. While poor form during the initial push can lose a team the heat, it is otherwise rarely, if ever, decisive. Over the rest of the course, sled speed depends on its weight, aerodynamics, runners, the condition of the ice, and the skill of the pilot. Race times are recorded in hundredths of seconds, so even seemingly minor errors, especially those at the beginning, which affect the remainder of the heat, can have a measurable impact on the final race standings. The men's and women's standings for normal races are calculated over the aggregate of 2 runs a heats. At the Olympic Winter Games and World Championships, all competitions consist of 4 heats. Olympic medal table. 4-man current Olympic champion 01. Russia 02. Latvia 03. United States 2-man current Olympic champion 01. Russia 02. Switzerland 03. United States 2-woman current Olympic champion 01. Canada 02. United States -1 03. United States -2 total Olympic ranking fatal accidents.